Hello and welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Memories. I am Wax the Brain Hussein, joined by Fash the $1,000,000 fan. And Fash, we have another very special episode, 25 years on from what is considered by many the greatest moment in professional wrestling. Do you agree?
I think it's certainly the greatest heel turn in professional wrestling history. And in terms of moments, I think it's, if it's not the greatest moment in terms of shocking everyone, it's certainly in the top five. We're talking about the moment, Wax, that I guess revitalized a ailing organization. It revitalized a career, but ultimately what this moment did was it revitalized a business, because I guess guys like you and I were still following wrestling at this time, but a lot of people had left, checked out in 1992, maybe early 1993. So I think given it's been 25 years, we're shooting on the 7th of July. I think you should let the cat out of the bag what we're going to talk about today.
We are talking about the revelation of the third man of the Outsiders, the revelation that it was. And we'll come to our thoughts and opinions and, what we were thinking at the time. But let's just recap very quickly. We're about a month in from Scott Hall making his debut. We talked about that in our special 25th anniversary of that show. We talked about Nash coming in a couple of weeks later and a bit of some of the shenanigans he got up to. Just prior to Bash at the Beach 1996, which is the event that we're really talking about here, we've got a Nitro episode, which really just ties up a few loose ends and gets us all ready for the big build-up. The Outsiders have bought a ticket. That famous act of some heels to do is buy a ticket to the show because the police are obviously enforcing a ban on them otherwise. So they make it to the show. They're in the audience. Halfway through the show, for some reason, they seem to get up from their seats and start coming down the ramp, at which point there's a ton of police surrounding them and stopping them from going any further. And that's when you start seeing some of the WCW guys coming down the ring, Sting, Savage, Luger. And interestingly, they're actually joined by some of the heels as well, like the Dungeon of Doom, the Giant and Kevin Sullivan were coming down, Ray Traylor. So that was interesting, just adding to the reality of the whole situation.
Yeah, I mean, I thought this was great because we're talking about, the heels buying tickets and things. But once again, this is one of the first times that this happened, certainly that we'd seen. So it was great. Part of the storyline, again, really emphasizing the fact that these guys are outsiders. They're not part of the company. They don't come through the entranceway. They've this time trumped WCW again by buying tickets. They're front row. And as you say, we know what's going to happen. They jump the barricade. And then there is this face off. And as you say, what made it interesting was other people coming, because that really then underlined the point that this is WCW versus these guys. And yes, there's heels and faces on this side and they don't like each other, but this is their house being attacked. And it was great because as you see, you have Sting, Lex Luger, and the match ran out in the paint, and we'd kind of touched upon the kind of war paint in our Nash episode. But what was hilarious was kind of Nash shouting, look at the clowns, which was pretty hilarious.
Yeah, Nash was really in his element throughout this
hilarious.
episode.
Yeah.
And you always thought that Hall was a split second later than Nash. It just goes to show, how smart Nash was as a guy. And all this stuff was ad-libbed, right? He wouldn't write anything down. But you're right. You also made a comment about whether Eric Bischoff enjoyed his frequent flyer miles for his last ride.
Yeah.
When they took him out. And
then they go to the back, right? And I say Kevin Nash didn't get to display this personality in WWF. So this was, I think, one of his frustrations. He was playing something that Vince wanted him to play, the kind of new Hulk Hogan, and we never saw this side, but he was kind of channeling this kind of Italian accent here, playing off Vinny Vegas a little bit.
Yeah.
And, even outside, then the police are escorting them outside to their car. But even, I thought this whole segment was hilarious as well, because they're talking about how Nash is saying, shall I buy you guys some donuts, and then outsiders, kind of Scott Hall says, outsiders will buy you some coffee and donuts, and then they go to their car, and you've got the little law enforcement guy saying, get in the car, and Nash jokes saying, take it easy, I've got bad knees.
Yeah,
and then it's the other funny bit when he goes, look at the car, boys, check this car, and he's like, you could all pull your checks together and still not afford something like this. So it was just hilarious stuff, and I say it was all ad-libbed.
Yeah.
And Kevin Nash was really getting to show his personality here that we hadn't seen in WWF.
Yeah, and it was just made even funnier by the fact that the cops were being really serious and really aggressive. Yeah. Nash was coming out with all these lines.
And they kept a straight face, right? It was brilliant. I mean, I'd encourage everyone to go obviously watch all these Nitros, and I'm sure, if you haven't, you need to see this whole period. But it's just brilliant how they built it up, because it was, once again, we keep saying this is so different. And these guys are being played as a threat, but they're just coming across as pretty cool and pretty funny in a very kind of grave and serious situation.
I just want to talk about just the setup to the pay-per-view. When you watch a WWF pay-per-view, even back then, the opening segment was always something you look forward to because, the production values and the story they were telling were excellent. This pay-per-view had a terrible opening segment.
It
was shit. There was no audio, other than a tune. There were just pictures, really, or videos showing the main sort of protagonists. And they really could have done a better job. And I think always we've thought this about WCW, that on this side of things, they were always lagging behind WWF.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, because you say I was watching it again, and it is just see, I like that music, and initially what people forget is that was the Outsiders' music and the whole hostile takeover. So I like, but yeah, it's just clips of what's been happening on Nitro, nothing really great. And as you say, this is where WWF, even back then, they've always been great with production and hyping something up. And this was, given what they've been doing, it was a pretty cold open in terms of that. It wasn't this kind of big voiceover or whatever. It was just like, here's some kind of vignettes, and here we go, we're at the pay-per-view. And for some reason, this whole setup and stage and everything looked much smaller to me now than it did back then. It looked like less grand. It was, a great visual with the beach and everything, but it just felt smaller and more constrained than maybe Nitro at the time, and certainly how WWF used to show its pay-per-views.
Yeah, and we start off with Tony's that line that he always goes, "Never before in the history of our sport has there been a moment like this." He said that, I'm sure, at least
but he was actually right at this time. It's just a shame that he's going to say 150 times after this, but he was actually pretty correct here. But I'd say a great opening, because I don't know, how did you feel watching this again? It was, they kept underlining the fact that this is different. This isn't a pay-per-view. This is a war. This is a fight. They're all scared. They're all on edge. I thought three of them portrayed it really well: Dusty Rhodes, Bobby the Brain Heenan, and Tony Schiavone.
I think they were all on fire, and you're right. We were all here really for one thing, and I know there's various other things on the card, especially a 5-star opening match between Rey Mysterio and Psychosis. I managed to watch that one again. It was terrific. But really, this is only going to be remembered for that one thing that happens towards the end. During the show, there's many references to what's happening. The first sort of segment that we have about this is that we get the WCW trio, Savage, Luger, and Sting, doing an interview.
You've got the three men. You got Sting. You've got Lex Luger, and we'll talk a little bit more about him and the shenanigans that were in the background, and the Macho Man, Randy Savage, who was acting a bit crazy leading into this event. So that was Team WCW, a very impressive Team WCW when you look at it.
Yeah, you got probably the top three faces there.
And Mr. Hogan.
And Mr. Hogan. But Hogan's like part-timer almost compared to these guys. And Mean Gene, they're really hamming up the idea of the third man. And Lex says it's an honor and a privilege to be part of the WCW team. Macho Man says he doesn't care who the third man's going to be because they're going to get a beating just like the others. Do you think, just for even more reality's sake, they should have added in a heel persona to the trio, or do you think it was the right mix?
I think, given where we are in 1996, I think it probably was a right mix. Now, the only other person you could have put in here was Ric Flair.
Yeah.
And interestingly, because remember this random draw, which we've discussed about, and it was these three. And we'll talk about this. There's, at the time we weren't buying dirt sheets and things, so it was speculation. But, there was talk early that Lex Luger, and we'll talk about the other speculation later on, but Lex Luger might be the third man, and it fit in quite well if you think about it, because we mentioned this, in 1995 first Nitro, he comes out as a kind of outsider, and then up to this point he'd been playing the kind of babyface and heel kind of tweener character. And I know you didn't give him any credit a couple of episodes ago. Please check this out in the archives. But when I was saying that, he deliberately said WWW and then changed it to WCW in a promo. Some people were playing on the fact that maybe he is the third man, and that he will turn on these two. But I think when he was put as part of the team, going back and reading things, people felt that wouldn't be the case, and there was kind of to and froing. But at that point, maybe you could have had a Ric Flair if it wasn't Lex Luger. and certainly would have been a good representation because the Macho Man was feuding with Ric Flair at the
Yeah.
time as well. We forget about all these feuds after this; they're
Yeah.
kind of all dropped. But I think he's the only one that really could have fit in and might have added a bit of tension. But I think because it was kind of war scenario, maybe 3 baby faces was the best
Yeah.
way to go
I think they
down.
were really holding back Ric Flair for what was to come as the
Yeah.
real WCW guy up against
Yeah.
the threat that was
Yeah.
from the NWO. The other thing I really noticed about this whole segment was Macho Man reacting to everything the other two guys were saying. And it would be so off-putting if somebody was just shouting at you in your face while you're trying to get across your promo. I thought that the Sting and Luger actually did quite a good job with Macho Man just shouting in their face.
Yeah.
Excitement. I mean, the next segment we get a couple of these is with Mean Gene in the back. He's wanting to interview the outsiders, but there's like a police cordon outside their changing rooms. And he asked the question, "Where is Eric Bischoff?" And actually, that was a good point. I had to go back and obviously rewatch to remember that Eric Bischoff wasn't actually on the show.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of subsequent to that, there's a lot of talk about why he wasn't on the show. I can't actually remember what the real reason
Yeah,
was.
I think because remember he had been injured at Great American Bash. Obviously, we've covered that. So when he got jackknifed through the stage, and then he'd been off Nitro. So we hadn't seen him leading up to this event. But then, yeah, they kept bringing up the fact, where's Eric? Is he negotiating with somebody? Is he in the back? So they're kind of throwing all these kind of red herrings. But as you say, he's not. And I don't think they ever explained where he was because he does show up on the next Nitro. So I guess it was just part of the, where is he? Have they done something to him? And just adding to the whole kind of paranoia, I guess, was what they were trying to create here.
Yeah. And then the second segment with Mean Gene, again, similar situation, but this time he's been eavesdropping on the locker room
outside the door, as used to do many times to different people over the years.
He said he hears somebody sounding familiar, but it's too muffled a voice that he can't quite place it. And he asks Tony, do you have a clue? And as usual, Tony doesn't have a clue about anything because he's never told. And he then says, which I thought was a really good idea, ask the police.
He did say he said pay them a bit of money.
Give them a bit of money. Yeah. And Gene is about to, and then he realizes that he probably doesn't want to be caught bribing the police.
His moral compass started working, but he was newly influenced by Bobby Heenan. But that's what I say, it's the right thing to do, right? But it was once again, the build up to this was excellent. You see, he's eavesdropping, he can hear a voice, but he doesn't really know, he can't place it because it's muffled. So he gives an update, but he doesn't give an update. And what that made me laugh about now was when you watch modern news, 24-hour news, you get a lot of this. It's an update, but it's not really an update. And that was kind of Mean Gene's scoop, wasn't really much of a scoop.
Yeah. And really then we're up to the match itself, which is the main event. It's the Outsiders against the WCW trio we talked about. Obviously, Nash and Hall come into the ring, but they're not followed by the third man, which has everyone confused. Where is this third person? And it even leads to an impromptu Mean Gene interview in the ring.
He gets in there.
He gets in and asks, where is the third man? And they go, well, he's here and he's ready. And Nash goes, the two of them are enough for WCW anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Which infuriates the commentator. So once again, it's brilliant. It's once again, it's adding to it. So I think if you're watching this at the time, you're either thinking, wait a minute, is this a swerve? And there isn't a third man, which would be a bit of a bummer. Or there's somebody coming, and who is it? And then with that, Michael Buffer who's in the ring, and you're trying to really, I used to love him as an announcer, and this kind of gave a big time feel with the whole Let's Get Ready to Rumble. But you just know that he's just reading a bunch of stuff, and he has no clue what's going on, which I find quite hilarious. And then out come Team WCW to a pop as well. I mean, one thing I will say is Nash and Hall came out to a strong pop. But obviously WCW guys come out to a big pop, and this is the first time. I mean, even as they were coming out, I don't think they addressed them as Nash and Hall. It's during the match that we hear these names for the first time. So it's really keeping the kind of mystery around what their names are as well.
Yeah, everything really comes together this night, doesn't it?
Yeah.
In terms of, let me talk a little bit about the match, and then I'll throw over to you for the sort of the main bits.
Yeah.
I mean, the match kicks off. I felt the crowd was a little bit subdued, and I thought maybe that was because they were really expecting to see the third man there and then. And when they didn't, they were probably all a little bit, well, is it really happening? Well, we're going to have to wait another 15 minutes for this, so let's all calm down. But they started slow, the crowd did, and they eventually get back into the match. And then the main sort of talking point in the first bit of the match is Lex effectively gets knocked out by Sting, and there's a stretcher job, and they take him to the back, and that all feeds into what you were talking about earlier, Fash.
Yeah, it does. So this is the thing, before they really get at it, Sting inadvertently eliminates Lex Luger, so he's going for a splash. And this was great because it played off two elements of the story. So one is this thing we're talking about in the background. Lex Luger was being discussed as the third man, and Eric Bischoff has later said he played to this a little bit. And with him going, so you're thinking one of two things: Lex isn't really injured, and he's going to come back later on, and he's going to turn in WCW, or did Sting inadvertently injure Lex Luger? Did he mean to?
Yeah.
Could Sting be the third man? So once again, they added to this, and it was great. The reactions from the commentators after this were kind of like unsure and not saying what they want to say, but it was as if they were trying to accuse one of the two, but they're not really saying it.
Yeah.
And that added to as well. So just adding to the tension. And yeah, it becomes a straight up tag team match then, which seems a bit fishy.
Yeah, it does. And again, I think everybody, when you're watching this, you're thinking of every possible permutation of everything that's happening because
Yeah.
you're just so interested in finding out who this third man is. Sting takes over the match for a few minutes, but then Nash takes him down, and Sting takes a beating for quite a long portion of the match until Macho Man eventually gets tagged in and starts pounding on both Nash and Hall. And we think he could come out the victor here until Nash gets a low blow on him and stops.
A double low blow, isn't it? He nails.
So maybe he's fed up of Macho Man's double axe hammer blows through the match, and he gives him a low blow, and that really just stops Macho Man in his tracks. And Nash and Hall start punishing Macho Man and Sting in the ring. And then suddenly the fans get off their feet, Fash. Why?
Yeah, because you don't see what's happening, but you hear a rumble and a pop, and out comes our man, Mr. Hulkamania, as Dusty Rhodes calls him Hulkamania, as he comes down the aisle. And this is it. We're leading up to the big moment now. And as he's walking down, Tony Schiavone's going crazy. I say Dusty Rhodes saying Hulkamania. And then Bobby Heenan throws in, but whose side is he on? Now, let's do a little sideway here. Do you think Bobby Heenan spoiled this moment or not?
It's fortunate that I wasn't watching at the time it occurred, right? And we found out before we watched it. But every time I now watch it, I can't help but think that is a giveaway to what is potentially going to happen. And I think he did get a bit of heat on him backstage after that as well.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So I, at the time, would have thought, and even watching, did he spoil it? But then I was thinking from the other angle. And if Bobby Heenan is being Bobby Heenan, why would he not say that? Because his whole career was based on doubting Hulk Hogan, ripping into Hulk Hogan. So as he's coming out, he's going to do the natural thing for him to say, oh, Hulk Hogan's not right. So if Bobby Heenan at the time would react as, oh, here's Hulk Hogan and I'm cheering, it wouldn't have felt as natural. So even though, there's speculation, I think Eric Bischoff once again said there wasn't heat on him, but people have speculated about this for years. I think at the moment, he probably takes out of it a little bit after you see what happens as well, then that adds to it. But really, it should be a natural Bobby Heenan reaction. But anyway, the kind of Tony and Dusty tried to kind of cover that up, and then Hogan gets in the ring. He tears his shirt as Hulk Hogan does. But then, Wax, what happens next isn't anticipated. We're seeing Nash outside. He looks scared. Hall's watching. But what happens next, essentially, is the moment that changed the game.
It is. I mean, he's teared off his shirt, as you say. He's staring at Nash and Hall outside the ring, and at that point, Hogan's here to save the day. And then suddenly, he sort of makes his way to the corner and pushes the referee out of the way, looks around slightly, and just drops his leg on the lying Macho Man on the floor. And at that point, the crowd goes apeshit. The commentators go apeshit. Everybody watching at home probably thinking, "Oh my God, how could this be?" It's Hulk Hogan. Could he possibly turn
He's
on?
the third man. And that's when they say, he's the third man. He's the third man. And you start hearing the frenzy and the panic in the commentators. And he hits a few more leg drops, throws the referee out of the ring, as you say. And then he covers the Macho Man. And Scott Hall makes the pin, which Tony Schiavone says that they're not even going to acknowledge. But the deed has been done. It wasn't about the match. It was about this. The third man has been revealed, and ultimately it is the biggest heel turn in wrestling history, and something that the average person watching just could not have imagined.
Yeah, and it was really interesting to see the crowd reaction, because a lot of visibly behind the ring, you could see people up in arms cheering, what was happening, probably in shock more than anything else.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, you could hear the whistling and the jeers of the crowd as well. So, there was a fair mix in terms of, half the crowd being completely shocked. And very soon you start seeing the trash coming into the ring, and you see this is a moment not like any other that we've ever witnessed.
Well, I say it adds to it, because if you think it's the perfect storm, like say the trash at this point was very organic in terms of how people were reacting. Later on, I think, you know, it became a thing in Nitro where people just loved throwing the trash in the ring. But here, it's just a reaction to, as you see, people are cheering because they're like, oh, they got us, what a shock. And then there's genuine anger, because, you know, Hogan was the guy from WWF anyway, and he wasn't, you know, he was getting a mixed reaction at best from WCW's loyal fan base.
Yep.
So yeah, there's this kind of, what do we do here? And it's this natural kind of, everybody starts throwing trash in the ring, the crowd's going crazy, and you know, people are in disbelief. I mean, I think some of Bobby Heenan, I'm looking back at some of my notes, you know, and he's basically saying that this is the lowest shot delivered to professional wrestling. You've got Tony Schiavone saying, let's get everybody out here and kick his rear end. It's just, you know, great reactions. And you know, Dusty Rhodes is saying you've kind of ruined the
career of a lifetime thrown down the drain from Dusty. That's the line.
I think he calls him kid as well, which
Yeah.
was a little bit or something like that. But with all this happening, all this bedlam, then Mean Gene once again gets in the ring, and he wasn't anticipating what's just happened.
Yeah, and you know, he goes, excuse me, right, to get the Hulk Hogan's attention. What in the world are you thinking, Hogan? And Hogan, this is probably the absolute best Hogan has ever been on the mic. You know, delivering the thing that needed to be delivered, red hot material. You know, he goes, first of all, tell these people to shut up. You know, and straight away, this is a different Hogan to what we've ever seen before. Have you ever heard Hogan say "shut up" to anybody?
I've not heard Shogun say it, and I've
That's
not
Shogun.
heard Hogan say it either. And what I will do, Max, is right now we'll play some of this promo because, you know,
Yep.
I think
iconic.
anytime you hear it, it's amazing.
Excuse me. Excuse me. What in the world are you thinking?
Mean Gene, the first thing you need to do is to tell these people to shut up if you want to hear what I gotta say.
I have been with you for so many years. For you to join up with the likes of these two men absolutely makes me sick to my stomach. And I think that these people here and a lot of other people around the world have had just about enough of this man, and you want to put yourself in this group? You've got to be kidding me.
Well, the first thing you gotta realize, brother, is this right here is the future of wrestling. You can call this the new world order of wrestling, brother. These two men right here came from a great big organization up north, and everybody was wondering who the third man was. Well, who knows more about that organization than me, brother?
I've been there, I've done that. You have made the wrong decision, in my opinion.
Well, let me tell you something. I made that organization a monster. I made people rich up there. I made the people that ran that organization rich up there, brother. And when it all came to pass, the name Hulk Hogan, the man Hulk Hogan, got bigger than the whole organization, brother. And then billionaire Ted, amigo, he wanted to talk turkey with Hulk Hogan. Well, billionaire Ted promised me movies, brother. Billionaire Ted promised me millions of dollars. And billionaire Ted promised me world caliber matches. And as far as billionaire Ted goes, Eric Bischoff and the whole WCW goes, I'm bored, brother. That's why these two guys here, the so-called outsiders, these are the men I want as my friends. They're the new blood of professional wrestling, brother. And not only are we gonna take over the whole wrestling business with Hulk Hogan and the new blood, the monsters with me, we will destroy everything in our path, Mean Gene.
Look at all of this crap in this ring. This is what's in the future for you if you want to hang around the likes of this man Hall and this man Nash.
As far as I'm concerned, all of this crap in the ring represents these fans out here. For 2 years, brother, For 2 years, I held my head high. I did everything for the charities. I did everything for the kids. And the reception I got when I came out here, you fans can stick it, brother. Because if it wasn't for Hulk Hogan, you people wouldn't be here. If it wasn't for Hulk Hogan, Eric Bischoff would be still selling meat from a truck in Minneapolis. And if it wasn't for Hulk Hogan, all these Johnny-come-latelys that you see out here, wrestling wouldn't be here. I was selling out the world, brother, while they were bumming gas to put in their car to get to high school. So the way it is now, brother, with Hulk Hogan and the New World Organization of Wrestling, brother, me and the new blood by my side, what you gonna do when the New World Organization runs wild on you? What you gonna do? What are you gonna do?
Don't touch me, I'm gonna flee the lawyers.
He never saw heel Hulk Hogan before he became famous. So we saw the red and yellow superhero, as did most of the people that got into wrestling. He's the ultimate hero, you know, the say your prayers, man, eat your vitamins. And yeah, as you say, he just transforms in the moment into this great heel, and he delivers the promo of a lifetime. It's just excellent. But you know what I want to say? As he was coming out, he looked nervous.
Yeah,
You know, he looks really nervous as he's coming out, and you know that kind of gives it away a wee bit. It's like, but
I picked up on that,
Yeah.
as you say. He
Yeah.
was really nervous coming into the ring. Even when he was in the ring doing his stuff, he looked really nervous and a
he
bit
looks
lost.
pensive. Yeah.
Whereas the other two are really comfortable. And then, but when he opens his mouth, he's red
Then
hot.
it's like once he's in Ligra and the deed's done, I think once, you know, it's
Yeah.
that kind of, you know, he must have been, a million things must have been going through his head, right? Because there was this whole talk, you know, Eric Bischoff asked him to turn heel in the past, said he would never do it. He's the big hero. He's made a fortune by being this superhero.
Yeah.
So a million things must be running through his brain. But once he drops that leg, I think that's it, is done. And then he transforms into this character. And as he delivers a great promo. Which really, you know, the whole point was the moment is great when he drops the leg and he's revealed as a third man, but then the promo takes it to the next level, because if he would have dropped a weak promo here, you know, it's not the same momentum, but he takes it to the next level with what he says and how he says it. And Kevin Nash and Scott Hall's reactions are great as well throughout this, and Mean Gene as well. He just looks heartbroken as he's talking to the Hulkster.
Yep. So let's pick out a couple of the key lines in that speech. You know, he goes, "This is the future of the business. You can call us the New World Order." And there you go. The New World Order is born, nWo, who the WWE Network are really trying to push their shirts again for some reason. I think they've got a new program out.
I wonder
I was on the
why.
network over the last couple of days, and there's just tons and tons of nWo related stuff on there just now. And then there's a reference made of, you know, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall coming from the big organization that Hulk says he made, but Hulk got bigger than that organization and left. And then he goes, "Billionaire Ted promised him money, movies, and world-class matches, but he's bored now." And I thought Hogan looked visibly younger in this promo.
He did. It's weird. He kind of turned a clock. I know he lost a bit of weight, but he just looked as if he was. And the bandana always helps.
Yeah.
But he did, and you know, he's talking about billionaire Ted. You wanted to talk turkey with him, promised him all these things. And the thing about being bored was pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
And then he moves into the next part of his promo.
Yeah, Gene asked him, Gene tell him, "Look at this crap in the ring. This is what is in your future." And Hogan replies, "All this crap represents the fans out there."
And then he tells him to stick it as well, doesn't he? At which point you get more of a reaction, and then you see, you know, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall also kind of doing to the crowd. It's just brilliant. I mean, what unfortunately for Mr. Hogan, like I say, it's probably the greatest heel promo ever, right? But he does make a few mistakes in this. He then refers to the New World Organization a few times. So he's probably forgotten the New World Organization of Wrestling instead of the New World Order of Wrestling. So he says that a few times. But, you know, he talks about another funny line. I mean, it's a line which I can say, Wax, if it wasn't for this podcast or me, you'd still be selling meat out of a van in the West End of Glasgow. And similarly, if it wasn't for Hulk Hogan, Eric Bischoff would still be in Minneapolis selling meat out of a van as well. So another kind of shot to management, which I found really funny as well.
Yeah. And, the promo was almost at an end, and still the fans are just going crazy in the background, still continue with the trash. And I think some of it is loaded drinks,
Yeah, I know
hitting
it is. Yeah.
people on the back and the face, I think, in one case. So the fans are really overjoyed by what they've seen. At the same time, some of them are really pissed off. And
Yeah,
again, it goes
the
back
kids
to
are heartbroken. You see the
Yeah.
faces. I mean, this is like, say, it's hard to now. People would be like, but remember, this is a time where people still believed, and Hulk Hogan was this hero, and there was a divide between good guys and bad guys, and this was the home team, WCW, and these guys are outsiders. The belief is there. The majority of people don't read any spoilers or speculation, so this is just all a real reaction, which you can't get today
Yeah.
unless you really swerve the internet and insiders. So it's such a kind of human reaction to all this. I say different things, but that's what makes the moment. You can't replicate this. And Eric Bischoff must have been standing in behind the scenes watching this saying, what have I created? This is gone even better than I could have imagined. So Wax, let's go back to 1996, right? I was a 13-year-old. I think you were 12. We had got into Nitro then. We were watching it. It was on TNT, 7 o'clock every Friday. And this was something that really drew us in, as we've said. At the time, do you remember having your own speculation? Once again, making the point, the internet was in its infancy. We weren't buying the dirt sheets. We were buying the magazines, but they were obviously on a lag. Even the dirt sheets were at a lag. So do you remember going back thinking, who's the third man going to be?
I thought it was going to be one of the WCW guys in the match. So I thought it was going to be Savage, Luger, or Sting. And I think back then I was kind of more heading towards Macho Man being the guy rather than
Really?
Luger or Sting. And it wasn't really anything particular, but I just thought he would maybe make the biggest impact because he was the former WWF guy, although Lex Luger was as well. But
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Term. But I didn't think that it could possibly be Hulk Hogan. I just didn't.
I don't think either of us. I don't think anyone.
Even when he walked out, and even when he said it, I still didn't believe that Hogan could be the guy until he does the leg drop, and that's when everything comes.
But that's the thing, isn't it? Because we watched it after, and I was going back and thinking about this. We didn't know, and I kind of racked my brain for this until the following Friday, because I was thinking, is there a way we would have found out from the Sunday pay-per-view to Friday? I don't think there was.
Well,
unless there was
let me clarify, because I remember a phone call to hotline around about this period,
then. Right? Okay.
And then we had a phone call between ourselves, and it was revealed between ourselves before the actual show. We got to watch the show.
But that's interesting because
because
I remember the phone call. But what I remember the phone call that we had was you said to me, "Guess who it is?" And I said Sting, and then you said no, guess again, and I went quiet, and you said Hulk Hogan, and I was like, what? But I couldn't remember if that was on the Friday of Nitro that you'd watched it first, because obviously you'd watch the start and I'd get it on a delay because somebody local was recording it for me, or if that was in the interim, and that's the bit I couldn't remember. So if you're saying it was actually before we watched the show,
it was, yeah.
All right, so
but in that week, and yeah, it was the time when we were addicted to those hotlines.
Yeah, see, I thought it was after. I thought it was after this, but it might have been, maybe we did have Flutter or two before as you were buying magazines. But I mean, in terms of the Macho Man thing at the time, if you're speculating, does make sense. I remember my three guys. The first one was indeed Sting. I thought, because I think the way we were both looking at it, we're still kind of, as little kids, we're still educated fans here when you think about it, because we're thinking, okay, it's Hall, it's Nash. The third guy's got to be bigger than these two, or a bigger shock, or at least par. So at the beginning, I was thinking, Sting's the one that faced off with Razor Ramon, as I was still referring to him. So maybe he's in on this, and then he's part of the team. Then I was a little bit, maybe not. But, that'd be big, WCW Sun turning on them.
Yeah.
Then I thought, maybe it's genuinely a big addition. And I was thinking, well, Yokozuna's not been on TV in a while, so maybe Yokozuna's coming out to be the third man. And then my third one was one which was also speculated at the time, which we learned later on, was this man, Bret the Hitman Hart, in an alternative timeline, Wax. And of course, he was part of the NWO later on, but it wasn't the same. Bret Hart, from a Mark's point of view, made sense because he hadn't been seen since WrestleMania 12.
Yeah, because he was on and off the screen at that point, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was off. He's taking his break, and Shawn Michaels was the champion. So I'm thinking Hall, Nash, Bret Hart coming out, and that would have been epic. What we got was ultimately bigger. But those were my three, I remember. And then I guess pretty, I would say, educated guesses from both of us, kind of, building it together.
Yeah.
But maybe we should now move on to what the actual speculation was at the time, and it'll give me a chance to take some shots at your man, Mr.
Well,
Dave Meltzer.
Just before you do that, let me just come to Hulk Hogan being the third man.
Yeah, sorry.
It wasn't actually decided until very, very close to it happening. And I think even on the day, Eric Bischoff says he was unsure whether Hulk would go through with it because his family was against.
I don't buy that. I think this is them.
I think obviously they're all hamming up, but
you're right. It was very late in the day.
That they hadn't even met Hulk Hogan properly, Nash and Hall, before the deed was done, and that Bischoff always had Sting in the back of his mind as a backup plan if everything went pear-shaped and Hogan didn't agree that it would be him. But if they let it get this far, it's crazy that they actually...
Well, that's the thing, because it changed, because Scott Hall says they didn't even know until Hogan was coming out, so I'm not sure I buy that. And then Eric said, he wanted Hogan, but Sting was the backup, and they thought it will end up being Sting, but then, Hulk Hogan agreed. But I think, if there was this umming and ahhing, Hulk Hogan was seeing what was happening on TV, right? And he obviously wanted to be a part of this, so that probably said, actually, this is hot, and I need to be attached to this. And I'm really thankful it happened, because otherwise we might have had Hogan using his creative control to just demolish the nWo 3 months in. So in the end, what happened worked. But let's talk about some of the speculation. As I say, we weren't reading or watching, but we can look back in hindsight at some of the names that were being discussed. And some of them are credible and some of them are just woeful.
Yeah, well, the Bret Hart one, I think, was very credible now that you look back on it based on what was happening at the time. And I think it would have worked really well because he was coming fresh from WWF, and his character that evolved 96, 97 actually would have fit into the whole way that NW behaving. But he wasn't the top babyface in the world that would have carried off that pop, right? The other one, Sting. Let's briefly just talk about Sting. Sting showed that he could change characters completely when he brought in the Crow Sting, a couple of years from this point. So, maybe potentially he could have pulled this off. He could have been that cool guy, but then we wouldn't have had the Sting Hogan face off maybe further down the line.
Yeah,
I think that would have worked.
I think, when I think about it, he would have been at the time, if you're looking at the WCW roster, he would have been the best choice outside of Hogan. I think the initial shock would have been great. He probably would have needed Nash and Hall to do a lot of the kind of promo cutting alongside him, because he'd never been a heel up to this point, and the audience never really accepted Sting as a heel, even when he tried later on. So I think it would have been, because we wouldn't have this alternative of what actually happened, I think it would have worked to a degree, but still not as successful. And in the same vein, Lex Luger wouldn't have been as successful for me because he'd been in WCW for a while now. Yes, it linked quite nicely to the outsider stuff, but he, as a member, fine, but as the main guy, after the initial shock of look what he's done, it still doesn't carry the same gravitas that a Hulk Hogan does. But so these are still credible big names. Right? Let's talk about some of the others.
So those are the credible names, and you would think a man like Dave Meltzer would be better informed, but this is the specific line from the Wrestling Observer. Bischoff, Hall, and Nash were discussing names this past week with Mabel as the top candidate. Another one, potential one, was Crush mentioned in the same paragraph. Now, Fash, you get started because I know you've got a bee in your bonnet about Dave Meltzer. So,
well, I think even you can't defend this, right? So I'm saying I'm 13, you're 12, and even we know that when you deliver a surprise, it's got to be on par or better than what you've already done. And now, in what world, in what reality would Mabel, Nelson Fraser coming out as a third man, or Crush coming out as a third man? What would be the point of that as a surprise? Does that make any sense? Even if if the speculation was there for his own credibility, why put that down in your newsletter? Because it's just stupid.
I mean, these guys weren't even super successful in the WWF. So what? You're absolutely right. It makes zero sense, and it goes against the whole credibility of what Meltzer has been, telling.
Literally, you can tell he was just listening to people, and even my Yokozuna point is, at least he's a former champion and he's a huge guy and he defeated Hogan in the past, so it wouldn't have been the best, but I'd still say above these guys. And other people that were speculated at that time were Ted DiBiase, who eventually does join, but he wasn't wrestling anymore. Jeff Jarrett. Now, how could Jeff Jarrett be the third man? How is that bigger than what we've already got? Unless you're it wasn't so in a world where contracts don't matter, Wax, right? The guys that can really pull this off if they're coming from WWF are a Bret Hart, a Shawn Michaels, and really it's those two. People might say Undertaker, but he's not going to gimmick. This is the thing in a world where, the legals don't exist. So, Bret Hart, from a point of view that he was off, he still had a contract there, was the most credible. And then, what we got was the best of the best that no one could have imagined, because it's the Ultimate Hero. But I mean, Mabel, Crush, Jeff Jarrett, really. And I think it's the last issue, isn't it, leading into the event? He finally says, well, there's been word, maybe, Hogan's at a film shoot, and word's been leaked that he's going to be the third man. So I guess those in the know who were dirt sheet geeks at the time, older than us, they would have then near the end seen the name Hogan mentioned. But I think even if they would have read it or seen it mentioned, they still would have been, can't see that happening. Exactly. It's so hard to believe, which made it, and we keep saying this, people watch this over and over, can't believe it's 25 years. It's like the the Austin stuff we talk about, the nWo stuff. When you watch it, especially the first kind of 96 to 97, and these first kind of 6 months, you can watch it again and again, and that heel turn, doesn't matter how many times you watch it, it just is as good as ever.
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly put it up, and if not the top moment of wrestling history, then certainly in the top three.
As you say, and it created the boom, right? The fact that we're probably talking about this today and podcasts got they were, this was the match that lit the fire. We talked in our last episode, and check it out in the archives, about Stone Cold Steve Austin and the Austin 316 speech. I think we both agreed that was organic. It led to something. This ignited the business, ignited WCW, and eventually it's going to change how WWE thinks about things. You don't have this moment. You don't have Hogan heel turn. You don't have us talking about this today.
Again, WCW pulled it off to perfection. I mean, you wouldn't see that many times, but certainly this led to the period of super success for them.
Exactly, and I think we'll talk about all this as we get into our proper timelines. But WWE never learned from Eric Bischoff and WCW here. The greatest thing about this was throughout the whole angle in this match, they kept Scott Hall and Kevin Nash strong. They weren't treated as a joke in any sort of way, and that's what made it. It wasn't about, let's show these guys that we're better and all that kind of stuff, and this kind of stupid things that Vince McMahon's done post the Monday Night Wars, and even maybe before it. It was just, if Eric Bischoff, lots of mistakes down the line, but this was just perfection. And I think on that note, this probably wraps up our series of special episodes, Max. Tony Schiavone ended the paper by saying, Hogan, you can go to hell, straight to hell. We're not going to tell our audience to go to hell. We're going to tell them to go and Google Wrestling with Memories, go on YouTube, go on the podcasting platforms. Please subscribe, share, like, give us your feedback, because this is a wrestling podcast by fans for fans, and we're always looking for feedback and just things, your feedback on what you'd like us to cover. But I've really enjoyed these series of 1996 25-year anniversary shows, Max.
Definitely, and there's just many more to come, obviously, with this era of wrestling, the Attitude Era kicking off. We're going to have a lot more of them in the future. But let's get back to 1992, our timeline, in the next few episodes, Fash. And we can cover the period of wrestling that we started off talking about, the golden era of wrestling.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that next episode. We're going to cover the Ultimate Warrior and Papa Shango's feud after WrestleMania 8. So that's going to be a lot of fun, Wax. A lot of people remember that angle. A lot of our new audience don't remember it because they're obviously much younger. So it's going to be great talking about that. And before you do the close, I just remembered one thing. We were so into this nWo thing, right? And we were so into black and white Hulk Hogan down the line that we took an old Hulk Hogan figure and we tried to color him black because the figure wasn't available. So that's how much we were in it. And with that, you can do our close, Wax.
Well, the immortal Hulk Hogan will always live on forever, no matter how black he gets. Until next time, he's Fash, I'm Wax, and this has been Wrestling with Memories.